Good evening, everybody. Welcome into the Nittany Lion Sports Report. It is live here, as always, on Bob Long Sports, simulcast on the Small Player Big Play app. It's Bob Long here, along with me, as always, Tyler Gelhaus. And Tyler, as crazy as this is the last scheduled game of the regular season, and really at all for this Penn State team in a crazy COVID-infested year. And on the line, some call it the greatest trophy in sports. Those folks don't know much about the Lombardi Trophy or the Stanley Cup, but some call it the greatest trophy in all of sports, the Land-Grant Trophy, between two land-grant institutions. They're going to duke it out this weekend, Tyler. How are you?
I'm doing great, Bob. Great to be back talking another win. Obviously, only the second of the year. But nevertheless, hopefully Penn State gets that third win this year. And we don't know what's going to happen next week with the crossover game. So, treat this, like it could be the last game. And for many, it's thank God it's over because it wasn't the year that anybody was expecting. And it certainly wasn't the season that Penn State and Penn State fan base was expecting. So it's winding down here, and let's hope they can close strong and get some momentum going into the next season.
Yeah, and like you said, not the best year for this Penn State team. So with that in mind, we are bringing back two guest pickers that have been on the show previously with strong ties to two programs that have overperformed this year. Ben Abercrombie, representing University of Missouri, his brother Jack, offensive line coach there, and Grant Upaliski, just as big a Coastal fan as you're going to find, giving us reports from live and on the ground, and that alone earned himself an opportunity to come back on the show. We're going to talk to them in just a few minutes. But before we do that, Tyler, let's talk about this game, because Rutgers hosting Penn State in Piscataway, a game that has spawned a lot of vitriol in the past among the fan bases, and specifically between these two fan bases here on the eastern side of the Big Ten footprint. But this, without fans, Penn State came out and quite frankly, they dominated the first quarter and a half, 2 quarters of this football game, completely, offensively and defensively.
I think it was most notable in the line of scrimmages on both sides. And, you hear, games are won and lost in the trenches. And honestly, for the most part, that's very accurate. That's what starts the bus up front, both sides of the ball. I mean, both lines played unbelievable. You have to consider the opponent a little bit. Rutgers is, you could say, better than they normally are. They're a well-coached team under Greg Schiano. But, it was impressive. It was a little, I guess you could say the game probably wasn't as close as the score indicated, only really being, a 16-point Penn State win at the end of the day. But I saw some good things. I would have liked to seen a better second half. I would have liked to seen that first half carry over a little bit in the second half. And there were also a lot of things, a couple things I really didn't like, specifically the quarterback play, and also some of the decision making in the play calling. I was scratching my head about, but I think those two honestly could go hand in hand, and why we were seeing some of the plays that we were saying.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And what I'll say is the most surprising thing that I saw play call-wise was Will Levis coming into the game in the third quarter, running 3 times straight up the middle. No decoy. I believe at the time it was what would that have been? Something like a 20-7 game, maybe.
It may have been like 20-7 at that point. If it was after, it was after I think Rutgers scored that crazy throw to across the field touchdown with your eyes closed. But I'm pretty sure it was the third quarter around that time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 20-7 the score at that point. Sean Clifford had just thrown a brutal interception. Let's just call it what it is, right? We've been hard on the kid, and certainly I feel badly about that. But at a high level of college football, 10-yard crossing pattern, wide open in the middle of the field,
right,
you need to make a better throw than that.
So, and with that, all day his throws were kind of, going high. I don't know if the weather had anything to do with it. It was, wet and windy in Piscataway. But really, honestly, it's kind of crazy when you're like just you're up 20 to nothing. You're like, don't do anything stupid. Don't turn it over. Interception, very next play. And it's just so preventable, and it allowed Rutgers really to have some hope and get back into the game right there when the game should have been put out of reach at that point.
Well, yes, and I think that what I'm getting at is with the Will Levis call didn't make any sense to me. However, if I were to try to assign some sense to it, what I would say is James Franklin took the car keys away from his high school teenager after she wrecked the car, and that being the keys taken away from Kirk Shiraka. Okay, you know what? It's 20-7. I get it. There's a lot of opportunity, we feel, against a not so strong Rutgers defense. We could take the top off. However, Rutgers cannot move the football. The only way that Penn State loses the game is if they make mistakes. So I get it. We'll put some things in the offensive playbook for next week against Michigan State. But right now, as James Franklin's saying, we need to win the game, Kirk.
Sure.
Take it a little more conservatively offensively.
Right. And also, I would have liked to seen Levis throw the ball maybe at least once or twice. I mean, because every time it was the same thing. And he wasn't even handing it off either. Every time he was in, it was Will Levis running.
I think he had 26 snaps and had 17 rushes with no throws. So, yes, that was a high percentage.
17 rushes, led the team. He and Kevon Lee split those honors with 17 apiece. But, yeah, I mean, just maybe once, do a little fake, remember see Tim Tebow, like to lean in a little bit, come back out. But I just don't think that they have any confidence really in either one of them to get the job done through the air. I think that's why you saw the playbook the way it was in the second half. And kudos to Penn State, the offensive line, the running backs, because they kept the chains moving and the clock ticking, which is important when you have a lead in the fourth quarter. And also huge credit to the defense. I mean, Rutgers, say what you will about Rutgers, but they were putting up points this year. They have a new offensive coordinator in there, and because the defense was able to play so well, that allowed Penn State to play that type of game in the second half, very conservative, just kind of run out the clock, don't worry about scoring. And the defense they were up to the challenge. I mean, there were times a couple times at midfield, Rutgers 4th and 1, going for it early in the game. Penn State stops them twice. After a Penn State turnover, Rutgers got the ball in good field position, actually netted minus 13 yards on the drive, went the other way. So a lot of good things I saw from the defense this week. Still a lot to work on open field tackling, but kudos to the defense.
One guy that can tackle, though, is Joey Porter Jr. And the guy that we weren't sure weren't sure, at least originally, if he was going to be a safety or a cornerback. Well, he is on the physical end of the spectrum of cornerbacks. And he relishes nothing more than a screen pass coming and either a tight end trying to kick out or another receiver trying to block and just knifing through, making a big tackle. He has been fun to watch, a real bright spot for this team, which is important because what I think a lot of Penn State fans thought at the beginning of the year, Tyler, the defensive secondary going to be anchored by Tariq Castro-Fields. He was banged up last year, things we didn't necessarily know about in live time. Coming back, had a decent start to the year, has not seen the field. He's been dressed, hasn't gone, a medical issue that's undisclosed. And so you really did need that anchor at the other side across where Tariq Castro-Fields would normally play because Keaton Ellis, Daquan Hardy, sure, they've played well enough, and that hasn't been a sore spot. Marquise Wilson, of course. It hasn't been a sore spot for the defense per se, but if you didn't have that anchor, albeit with a redshirt freshman on the other side, and you had two uncertain cornerbacks, that could have been a completely different story for this Penn State team.
Yeah, and I think, to piggyback off that with the secondary, I thought that Jaquan Brisker probably played his best game of the season. He's one that I hope sticks around for another year because I think it could certainly help his draft stock. Obviously, everyone is granted a free year this year. So everybody technically could come back next year. And he's one of the seniors that I think could really benefit from one more year, and obviously Penn State could benefit as well.
And what you could have, of course, is a free safety and a strong safety quarterback there, both from Lackawanna Community College.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not going to call it a good thing either, because you like having your recruits obviously come up through the system. But, if you can hit on those JUCO guys and you only have them for a short period of time and you're getting, starts out of them, that's absolutely huge. And it also keeps that Lackawanna pipeline open.
Yep, and of course we're talking about Jair Brown, who has played very well as the third safety for this defense this year. Again, tight ends, really good to see Brenton Strange and Theo Johnson getting snaps. I think that can be a strength for this team next year. Zach Kuntz still want to see more from him, but all of a sudden, if you have three guys ready to go next year, again, we're talking a lot about next year, but it becomes a nice pipeline there. Parker Washington had another great game. Certainly not, not necessarily a surprise at this point to see him be your most consistent receiver, but happy to see him get a touchdown catch and run. Phenomenal out of him. So, again, we keep coming back to the quarterback position. You hate to do it, but you seem to have found a balance at running back. Kevon Lee, a guy who can take the brunt of the carries. Hopefully Noah Kane back next year if you're a Penn State fan. And Devin Ford, very comfortable in his change-up back role. Again, things are starting to roll here. The game was, again, very bland in some ways because of some of that play calling, especially in the second half. But I do believe that comes back to, boy, we just don't have a quarterback, if you're James Franklin saying this, that you can trust to not get the team in trouble. The defense is playing good enough. We're going to rough this up and make this, ugly, but win the game and get to 2-5. And that's exactly where they are.
And that's fine, against teams like Rutgers. But, once we saw what happened earlier in the season with tougher competition, which should make for an interesting offseason to see what Penn State does at the quarterback position. I would be shocked if they don't, at least take a look at the portal. I think they have to and see what they can do there. And because, they could be a quarterback away, and we see all the difference in the world quarterback makes it, in football, but specifically separating the college football playoff teams from the rest. I mean, that's really what it comes down to most of the time.
Yes, 100%. One of those teams that might have one of those college football playoff quarterbacks is a team that played Michigan State this weekend, and that was Ohio State. So we'll talk a little bit about this Penn State-Michigan State game under the umbrella of what happened when Ohio State played Sparty. That was, unfortunately for Sparty, a bit of an embarrassment. That game was over pretty much as it was starting. Ohio State was in full control, and Michigan State, other than the Northwestern game, which you see Wisconsin lose to Indiana and look really, really bad in the process, Tyler, makes you wonder then about Northwestern's win against Wisconsin. Perhaps that wasn't as big a deal as it was. And so Michigan State beating Northwestern, if you take some transitive property, which you can really never do in sports, but we're going to some extent, maybe that's sort of more explainable. How did Michigan State beat Northwestern? Well, maybe Northwestern isn't very good because Wisconsin isn't very good. I think Penn State has no problem winning this one this weekend, which is unbelievable to say. At 2-5, and they started 0-5, and they looked lifeless against Maryland. But I do like to think that this team has turned a little bit of a corner, Tyler. Perhaps Sean Clifford is being a little bit more conservative offensively. The interception wasn't good, but it also wasn't the worst throw I've ever seen, and it wasn't trying to throw at a spot where he shouldn't be throwing. It was just inaccuracy. I like to think that with the newfound running attack with Kevon Lee and Ford at change-up back, Theo Johnson, and we've seen Parker Washington, guys that we didn't expect to necessarily contribute in the way that they have. I like to think that this is a Penn State team that will win the game, go to 3-5, and await whatever comes next in the +1.
Yeah, I think so too. I think there's something to be said about winning the last two games. I also think there's something to be said about Michigan State just getting their teeth kicked in by Ohio State. And, mentally, it's just about where these guys, both teams are mentally. I mean, no doubt Penn State is more talented. They also are playing for their seniors as well. It's senior day at Penn State on Saturday, and obviously it's not going to be a normal senior day, but it's still a lot of these guys' last games at Beaver Stadium, and I think that's another added bonus for Penn State going into this matchup.
And the Land Grant Trophy, of
Of
course.
course.
But yeah. So again, not a ton more to say. Michigan State is as bad as they've ever been, in dire straits.
Yes, and you mentioned they beat Northwestern, who beat Wisconsin. So what's that say about Wisconsin, who just lost to Indiana with a backup quarterback? Indiana had a backup quarterback. They go and beat Wisconsin on the road. The Big Ten is just not good this year. I mean, it really isn't. It's Ohio. It literally, and it usually is. It's Ohio State and everybody else, but that gap this year is so much. Indiana is probably the second best team in the Big Ten in my opinion.
100%. I mean, I don't even know how you could possibly disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you would say, I don't know, 3. I mean, 3 could be Iowa or Northwestern at 3-4. I mean, but it's just it's been a really down year for the Big Ten. But again, not that surprising being what they dealt with who knows what these programs are really doing in the offseason. I mean, in August, nobody thought they were going to be playing. So, something, see how the conference as a whole bounces back next year, I think will be important for the conference to bounce back in a good way next year.
Yeah, you talk about Ohio State, you talk about thinking that they were or were not going to be playing. There was a lot of uncertainty around this one, the game. Michigan, Ohio State, that game has been canceled. And so technically, unless there's enough cancellations across the conference this weekend, I know there's at least one more cancellation, but unless there are more, Ohio State will fall below the 2-game threshold, the delta needed from the average game played in conference by the Big Ten teams, right? So they won't get their 6 games compared to the league's 8. That would be the requisite in order to qualify for the +1 Big Ten Championship Game 2020 version. Unclear as to what's going to happen in that regard. They say, well, these are the rules that have been established. Established when? In August of 2020? Before or after you said you weren't going to play at all this year? What established rules are you talking about? In fact, now, and I get it, right? Indiana's going to play all 8 games. They're going to go 8-1. Ohio State's going to go 5-0. But let's just undress this one a little bit. Ohio State would have to, in a 3-game stretch against other Big Ten teams, and we know how good or bad, right? We just talked about it, how bad this conference is. They would have to go 1-2 in those 3 games in order to not qualify for a normal Big Ten championship game, right? If you had a situation where you could throw 3 more games on the schedule for Ohio State, they'd have to lose 2 because a loss would put them equal with Indiana and they would have won that head-to-head. So the fact that folks think it's disingenuous or unfair to put Ohio State into that +1 game, it's quite frankly absurd to me.
Well, first of all, Ohio State was going to have Illinois. They had Illinois canceled, Maryland canceled, and Michigan canceled. Their 3 wins easily, all 3 of them. Yes, Ohio State is a best team in the Big Ten without question. Now, in terms of the championship game, here's the thing: how I look at it with Ohio State. If they're just say they're the 2 seed and they're playing the crossover game against a 2 seed from the West, there's a good chance, believe it or not, that that's actually a better opponent than Northwestern, who would likely be going. You would have Iowa or Wisconsin likely, depending on the outcome of that game this weekend. But I think as long as they can if they win that game, I mean, I think the college football playoff still takes them. In terms of the Big Ten, look, I mean, I really don't know how I feel about it because the rules are what they are, whatever they made up at the beginning of the season. Weeks ago, it was known that Wisconsin was going to be ineligible for the Big Ten championship, but then they dropped a few games, so nobody really cared anymore because they weren't going to it anyway. But, it's just so weird to me that they've only played 5 games from a college football playoff standpoint. They've only played 5 games, and now you could be comparing them to a Florida, a Texas A&M, who have played, I think, like 9 games and each have 1 loss. So I'm more interested to see how they look at Ohio State if they don't play for the Big Ten championship for the college football playoff. I'm interested to see how they view them.
Yeah, I hear ya. I do. I absolutely hear ya. Texas A&M lost by 28 points to Alabama. Do we need to see that again?
Because they would be the 4 seed. Look, I think that I think the playoffs already set. To be honest with you, I mean,
Okay.
as long as, well, if everything happens, what people think are going to happen, and Florida doesn't beat Alabama, it'll be Alabama 1. I really think Clemson goes to 2. I think they're going to beat Notre Dame. I think they'll go to 2. And with that, I think you'll have Ohio State go to 3, and I think you'll have Notre Dame at 4. And I think a lot of that, the Ohio State and Notre Dame jump is, 1, Ohio State would be undefeated. And 2, even though they played less games, and Clemson, you could argue, or Notre Dame would have better wins than Ohio State does. But I don't know if people want to see Clemson, Notre Dame again a 3rd time. Maybe they do. If it's another really good game, maybe people want to see that. But I see it coming out as Florida 1, Clemson 2, Ohio State 3, and then Notre Dame 4. And it could get a little confusing if Florida goes and wins the SEC championship over Alabama. That's where it really could get confusing, and maybe Ohio State gets left out, or if Notre Dame loses to Clemson, then they're going to have another tough decision. What do they do? Because Notre Dame already beat Clemson once.
Yeah.
So that's when it would get really confusing. I think Texas A&M is not in a good spot for the playoff.
Nor should they be. I mean,
right,
frankly,
they lost to their division champ by 28, who's probably going to win the conference. And I find it tough when teams that don't win their conference make it to the playoff. I mean, it's just, I've always thought, your conference championship should hold a lot of weight. And if you're not even playing for it and you're still making the play, obviously we had Penn State in 2016 not make it when Ohio State did, and they didn't even play for the championship in the conference. But this is different. I don't think A&M should even – obviously they're in the conversation based off their record, but they're definitely on the outside looking, and they need a ton to happen here.
Which is why I brought up on Twitter, and a lot of folks followed suit, same line of thinking, and why not? Ole Miss, the Rebels, shut down for COVID. Texas A&M's game against Ole Miss is canceled this weekend. Ohio State, the Michigan team canceled. So why not? You want an 8-team playoff? You got it. Texas A&M, Ohio State this weekend. I know the Big Ten would have to change one of their crazy pre-established rules that were all talked about, created in August 2020, saying only conference games, but maybe just this one time. Break the time-honored tradition of 4 months here. Do a non-conference game.
I mean, look at what Coastal Carolina and BYU did last week.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an unbelievable game, and even though BYU lost, they still got a ton of publicity from the game. They're not going to be going to a New Year's Six bowl, but all of a sudden now Coastal Carolina.
But that was BYU's only way to sniff the college football playoff.
Right, and it was Coastal Carolina's best chance to win and say, look, New Year's Six possibly. You know what I mean? So
we should still even talk about that team. I don't, and we'll talk about it with Grant Opaliski on the other side, but we should talk about them as a fringe college football playoff contender if things go right.
So much would have to happen. I know you say, if things go right, but could you imagine them playing Alabama or even Clemson? I mean, it would be so ugly, I fear that, and it would, I don't know. I mean,
I get it.
We can talk about it for fun, but oh my God, Coastal Carolina center, their offensive line is like, a lot of them are under 6 foot. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
5'9" center, like 300 pounds. I'm like, what?
I
It was
hear you.
crazy. But,
But they handled a
they can
bigger
play.
offensive line.
It was impressive. It was certainly impressive.
Yeah. So a little bit of a run around college football. Again, Texas A&M, Ohio State. Don't hold your breath, but I think now Texas A&M fans, I think, might think they're in a slightly better position with the College Football Playoff Committee than they actually are. But if you really want to say, hey, you know what, that
Wow.
28 point loss doesn't matter, then go play Ohio State this weekend and win.
That could shake it up. I mean, now if that happens and A&M were to win, first of all, it would knock Ohio State out, without a doubt, in my opinion. And
100%.
now all of
well,
a sudden,
because Texas A&M is
right.
A&M is 5 right now, Ohio State is 4.
It would certainly be interesting, and I almost feel like it could almost knock the loser of the ACC championship. Obviously, if Clemson loses, they're out. But if they beat Notre Dame, and that's Notre Dame's only loss, but look, here comes A&M. They just beat Ohio State hypothetically. That would be another really, really hard decision for the committee.
Especially if it were a double-digit loss for Notre Dame. I agree. I don't think they're necessarily in yet. I think they're close, but I think
Notre Dame's in a very good spot.
Yep. Would you argue they're in the best spot of any team?
No. I think Alabama's in the best spot.
And is that because of how good they are, or because even if they lose,
it's a little bit of both. This week I have the schedule up right here. I don't even know who they play. I don't even know do they play this week? I don't even know. Alabama. They play at Arkansas. They play at Arkansas. Next week they'll play Florida. Look, if they lose, I don't know. If they lose to Florida, Florida would go, and I still think they still put Alabama in. Of course, how the game goes matters, but Alabama has been so good all year. It doesn't really matter who they've played, and I just think that they're one of the top 4 teams. And at the end of the day, the committee's been able to see them a ton. So, I think they're still in the best spot.
Well, with that said, let's make some picks here tonight. And we're going to do it with Ben Abercrombie, Grant Opaliski. They're going to hop on and talk some Coastal Carolina football and Missouri football. 2 incredible games for each of those programs. Welcoming 2 guest pickers back to the Nittany Lion Sports Report. Stay with us.
What does your character look like? Does it bounce back after each setback? Does it stand out by standing up? Does it make good on good intentions? Character is invisible until it's not. Only through action will the world know what it's made of, what you're made of. Find out how you can strengthen the character of your community alongside empowered veterans and families of the fallen at travismanion.org.
Welcome back inside the Nittany Lion Sports Report. Time for our favorite segment of the show, the guest picker segment. And you know what? We decided to up the ante from 1 to 2, and we got 2 of our favorites back here in studio with us. Grant Opaliski representing Coastal Carolina in all its glory, and Ben Abercrombie representing Mizzou, although I do see a different hat there tonight. Ben, how are you doing?
Doing well, Bob. I decided to whip out in honor of the Army-Navy game on Saturday. Love the game. Had to whip out the Army hat. Got to support the armed forces.
Go Army, beat Navy, huh?
That's right. That's right.
Very good. Well, we'll talk a little bit about that one. We'll talk about Missouri. But first, we have to talk about Coastal Carolina, BYU, Grant. Earlier that week, we thought it was going to be Coastal Carolina against Liberty. Obviously, things changed, COVID issues within the Liberty program. Quite possibly the greatest last-minute scheduling that we've seen in a long time in college football. Coastal to take on BYU flying in from Provo. You were down there on the ground reporting for us here. We appreciate that. How about that football game?
First of all the credit to BYU. They made college football fun last weekend. I think we can all agree on that. But Coastal came out, and that game was gritty. It wasn't the high-scoring game everyone thought it would be. It was in the trenches. There were some chippy plays, but that's why we loved it. And obviously the ending was super thrilling. But being around the area right now, the fan base is definitely growing. So hopefully they can ride this momentum. We can get into a New Year's 6, because that's been my goal all along, baby. Let's go.
There you go. So 4th and 2, you got the ball somewhere around the 50-yard line. Coastal does. Less than a minute left, 40-some seconds maybe. And the announcers, I mean, good on them, riverboat type of attitude there. He's saying, no question, go for it. I thought he was out of his mind. I thought it was an easy call to punt. But what say you as an avid follower of the program? What would you have done if you were on the sidelines there?
If you're constructing a college football coach in a laboratory, it's going to come out looking very similar to Jamie Chadwell. This guy is the it. I mean, I think next year he's going to have some big-time offers, but Chadwell, the confidence, the all-American vibe, the Southern drawl, everything about him, he's definitely built this program to where it is today. And he spoke about it on College Game Day. You know, he stated that these guys last year, the record may have not shown it. I believe 5-7, somewhere along those lines. But he could feel in the locker room the seniors were getting older. They were playing with more confidence. And we all know when the seniors play with confidence, the younger guys step up too. And the younger guys have more talent and energy. So I think it's all come together for Coastal this year. And I think it's a large part due to Jamie Chadwell's leadership. And like you said, the daring play calling, which we all know, the analytics have shown, go for 4th downs. Good things tend to happen. So I do like the call. And, Chadwell's that guy.
Yeah, they went for it a couple times. That particular time, they did pin BYU deep, and I thought that was important, especially since BYU did come down the field, had a heave towards the end zone. But, again, I think that timing kind of worked in Coastal's favor. Obviously, the other side of that is you go for it, you end the game right there. Tyler, I think you had something.
Yeah. No, Jamie Chadwell, obviously a lot of coaches are going to be looking at him, or a lot of schools will be looking at him for their vacancies. He will not be going to South Carolina, which many thought would be a prime opportunity. They hired Shane Beamer, son of Frank Beamer, Virginia Tech great coach. So that's certainly good news for Coastal Carolina, but I'm sure that his phone will be ringing off the hook here in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, it might have been the game of the year. I mean, 5:30 on ESPN2, maybe not the way you draw it up, but last-minute scheduling calls for last-minute broadcast partners, and it could not have been a better football game.
That ending, that was an unreal ending. It was really like a storybook ending for that game, and really for Coastal Carolina and what they've done this year. I mean, still have a couple games left, but that was unbelievable.
It was.
I will say, though, the storybook is not complete yet, though. They still have a couple tough games coming in. Louisiana Lafayette, I mean, they are no joke, the Raging Cajuns. So let's pump the brakes a little bit on Jamie Chadwell being this manufactured Southern draw guy, because I know Bob's going to mention it, but I have a Southern guy, in Columbus, Missouri, that might be turning a program around at a big-time school. So just stay tuned a little bit for that. But hey, I love the Sean, so I don't want to take away their spotlight right now.
All right, Ben. So you're talking about a tough road coming in, a team that's already in the top 15 of the college football playoff. I get it. Things could go wrong. What if things go right? I mean, it goes both ways, right? So if they win a couple more impressive games, what happens?
New Year's Six. They have to be. I mean, you got to give credit to teams that go undefeated. We saw UCF years ago. They thought they were the national champions with Scott Frost. However, you got to put these undefeated teams, especially teams that have played in a year like this, 10, 12 games. You got to put them in the New Year's Six. They've played the games. Let them play. I mean, there's nothing to lose at this point, honestly.
I agree. And college football is in dire need of these type of games year in, year out. I think the month of December, having these big-time games with these small-time schools, playing for something, a New Year's Six, should be more of a yearly tradition, and because it's so fun to watch. It's so fun to watch these games because these guys aren't in the spotlight every game. When they do get the chance, usually the games end up like they did on Saturday night, and they're very fun to watch. So as a college football fan, I definitely hope for more of these types of games in late in the year, November, December.
Yeah, it's like equivalent to, a Cinderella team in March Madness, whether it be like Loyola, Chicago, Florida Gulf Coast, some of the better Cinderella stories in the last couple of years. And it just makes it more fun to watch. I would love to see Coastal Carolina go up against a top team that doesn't make the playoff, whether that be A&M or Florida. I think it'd be awesome for the sport. and I'd love to see what they could do on that field against that team. Even though they probably wouldn't win, I think it would be awesome for college football fans and really awesome for Coastal Carolina. I mean, that school is going to blow up soon with admissions. I don't know if they have already, but I mean, they're being talked about a lot.
No doubt about it. So congrats to Coastal Carolina. Grant, congratulations to you. You've already said more on this show than Dustin Johnson said in about 15 minutes on College Game Day. Certainly not. No, you didn't see it?
I didn't catch that segment. I actually drove down to the campus just to check out the game day atmosphere. Spoke with a couple of the security guards. It was pretty dead fan base, but the game day crew was actually up top, so there was no out anywhere to stand to watch them. So it was kind of dead, but it was still a cool atmosphere. And like we all saw online, the students were definitely very into the game.
Yeah, that's great. No, Dustin it's tough to get more than a couple words out of him, but hell of a golfer, no doubt about that. All right, let's move on to Mizzou. Mizzou, if Coastal was the game of the year thus far for the implications and the fact that it was done on short notice, this one, Ben, might have been the shootout of the year, a 50-48 win. Arkansas goes for 2 in the final minutes of the game, gets it, leads by 1. They were just trading punch for punch. Last team to get the ball, they always say, right? That's the team that's going to win. Well, that's about how it went.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was on the edge of my seat. I mean, both teams had, I think, double-digit leads at one point in the game, and I don't think either Arkansas or Missouri even blinked an eye. I mean, they were just going blow for blow, punches left, right. I mean, it was a shootout, like you said, and it was a big game for both programs. I mean, right around that 500 mark. In a year where it's kind of hectic a little bit, both have younger coaches in their tenure. And honestly, hats off to Missouri for, not getting phased by that 2-point conversion, which was crazy. A lot of teams would, call it a day there. But I'll tell you what, Missouri, I know they got a tough matchup this week against Georgia, but they're coming off some big wins in tight matchups. LSU was another shootout. I like where this program's going. I know they got some good things going down there. So I'm pleased. It was an awesome game. I don't know what you guys thought. It was awesome.
Oh, I thought it was incredibly entertaining. I think that offense is unbelievable, which, again, a shout-out to Jack. Did you get a chance to talk to him after the game?
I did. He was juiced up. I mean, anytime your running back runs for 150-plus yards, 3 touchdowns, and then you have another running back, change of pace guy comes in, adds about 60 more yards with another couple touchdowns. I mean, something's going right on the offensive line. So that's good. I know he's excited.
Yeah, Grant was talking about Jamie Chadwell. Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri, I think, in my opinion, has to be the front runner for the SEC Coach of the Year. It's his first year. They're ranked. Can't tell you the last time Missouri was ranked. Maybe when Jeremy Maclin was there, Dorial Green Beckham. Anyway, he's the culture down there is pretty evident to me that program's certainly going in the right direction. And, you're going to have Georgia and Florida always, for the most part, a top 1 and 2 in the SEC. But after that, why not Missouri slide into the 3 and overtake like South Carolina and Tennessee, who have really no stability at this point? I think they're in a good spot.
Agreed. And then before we get to picks here, so the Army cap.
Yeah.
Any special connection there, or why go Army beat Navy?
So no special connection whatsoever. Just had it on my shelf and said, you know what? Your co-host didn't have this game on the slate, which I was very disappointed in. Because
I'm putting it on now. Don't worry. We'll go an extra game.
Okay, so put it on right now because these two schools and Air Force, I look forward to it every year because it's the CBS 3 o'clock game, whether it's in New York, Philadelphia, or D.C. Sometimes they do it in Baltimore. I forget.
Yeah.
Where is it this year? It is it's at West Point. Okay. So
it's at West Point. But these guys deserve their own day. When College Game Day's there, I mean, these guys are the best of the best. They're going, after college, they're going overseas, serving our nation. So I watch them every year, me and my pops, and then the Heisman comes on. Just a great tradition. So I was pretty juiced up for it, and then I was disappointed when Tyler doesn't put it on the slate.
I see that I didn't put it on. I'm going to put it on. But usually they have the week to themselves, like you just said. And this year, with everything going on, it all blended together. And, I'm seeing Coastal Carolina at Troy, and I'm like, we can't pick that game again. Next week, Coastal Carolina at Louisiana will probably be on the list. But anyway, let's get going here. We do have some adjustments. We took the Tulsa-Cincinnati game off. We're throwing Georgia-Missouri on. We're also going to throw Army-Navy on as well. So we'll start off right up top here at 12 o'clock noon. Number 9, Georgia travels to Columbia, Missouri to take on the freshly ranked number 25 Tigers of Missouri.
All right, we'll start with you then, Ben, since it is a Missouri pick, and we'll go in this order the rest of the way. We'll go Ben, Grant, me, Tyler.
Absolutely. Well, you know how I feel about Eli Drinkwitz. I think he's the hot new coach. The key to this game, I think it's going to be a little different than the Arkansas game a little bit. Georgia doesn't have that high-pace offense. Drinkwitz is going to keep the game close. He calls great plays. I saw the line somewhere double digits. It's in Missouri.
Yeah.
I think they're going to come out ready to play. It's going to be a lot closer than experts say. However, Missouri's leading tackler got ejected last game in the second half, Nick Bolton. Big loss. You got to make sure you keep an eye on that. Guy's a sidelines guy.
So
I'm just
he'll
going
only
to
miss the first half then, right?
Yeah, I don't. Is that the rule? Is it
If you
miss?
get ejected in the second half, you miss the first half of the next game. And with that, Ben, if they can keep it close for the first half, a lot of times when a big impact player comes in like that, it gives the team a much added boost, and that could go a long way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I don't think Georgia's anything to really ride home about. I don't think they're the best team in the East. I think Florida should be ahead of them. However, they lost to Texas A&M, earlier in the season. My heart is with Missouri, and guess what? I'm going to go with Missouri. I think the Tigers are going to do a little upset and propel this program into new heights. So that's my 2 cents.
This game isn't between the hedges. Missouri's the hot team right now. I've watched Georgia numerous times this year on CBS at 3:30, and they've been underwhelming. But that being said, I think Missouri's coming in. I think they're getting a lot of love. I'm going with the Dogs.
Yeah, it's funny. I find myself drawn to this Missouri team as well, and not just because we've had you on here twice, although I'm sure that's part of it, Ben. But I agree. I have come across thoroughly unimpressed by this Georgia team this year. Name brand alone, I think that's probably adding at least 3 to 4 points to the line at this point. Understand the point about your leading tackler there, Ben. But you know what? Maybe it's because we have you here. Maybe it's because of my 9-game lead over Tyler in the pick'em. But I am going to pick – sorry, had to do it. I'm going to pick Mizzou. What do you say?
Well, with picks like that, I think that'd get me back in it. I'll take
you might be right.
No, but honestly, I'm not impressed with Georgia this year. Missouri's clicking, and they're well coached. I mean, for first year, again, Drinkwitz, I think he's SEC Coach of the Year. I think this game is very close. Interested to see how Missouri uses that momentum to carry into this game, but also, you got to get that win out of your system. An emotional roller coaster win. You can't keep thinking back to that, and then you come out flat against Georgia. But I think it's going to be a very close game. I think Georgia will squeak it out, though, in the end. I hope I'm wrong, though. I hope I'm wrong.
I hope you're wrong, too.
I certainly hope I'm wrong. But next, let's go down the list here. Okay, we're going to go to the ACC. We're going to go down to Coral Gables. We have number 17, North Carolina, going to take on the Hurricanes of Miami.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting game for me. I mean, this is the most quiet 8-1 Miami Hurricanes team I've ever seen. Maybe it's just because Miami is in a conference with Notre Dame and Clemson. I think Notre Dame has the blueprint. They made the blueprint to stop Sam Howell. Obviously, the offense runs through that. I think Manny Diaz is going to muster up a good defensive strategy. I got the Hurricanes.
Yeah, this is an interesting game as well for me. I definitely thought this one over again. But I think Miami they're not the Miami of old. You know, I know we were pretty young whenever they were the powerhouse in the early 2000s, and then they kind of tailed off. And North Carolina's had some players on offense, and I don't want to bet against talent right now. I think Sam Howell goes in there. I think North Carolina wins.
I agree with you, Grant. I'm going with the upset here as well on the road. I like North Carolina win this game. Miami, a good team, no doubt about it. They looked a little feeble against Clemson. A lot of teams are going to look not so good against Clemson, but I was impressed with North Carolina's performance against Notre Dame, especially in the first half. If they can cultivate some of that, I do think they'd find a way to squeak this one out, but could be one of the games of the weekend here. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think it's going to be quietly one of the better games as well. I think I like North Carolina. I like both quarterbacks, Howell and King at Miami. But I've seen North Carolina play a little bit more this year, albeit one of the games was a loss to Notre Dame. But I think they're a well-coached team, Mac Brown, and I think the Tar Heels will go into Miami and get the win. Next, we're going to go to the Big Ten. I gave you guys Wisconsin at Iowa, right? That was one of the games?
Oh, yeah.
All right, yeah, we're going to go to the Big Ten. You know, what do you guys call it? Ham sandwich at quarterback, Wisconsin.
Oh, I got it.
taking on the Hawkeyes, number 16 of Iowa. Wisconsin has not looked good ever since those comments made about their quarterback that is actually a very good quarterback, but hasn't played up to that since that opening game.
Yeah, so I circled this one specifically because I was loving Graham Mertz about a couple weeks ago. Obviously, that's not the case. You know, this started off really well, weeks 1 through 2, but they're back to the bread sandwich on offense, averaging 10.5 points over the last 2 games. And let's give Iowa some credit. They started off 0-2. This team's built for December. And quite frankly, they're built for January, too. They always finish strong, always do well in bowl games. I'm going to go with Kirk Ferentz. This is going to be an old school, buckle your chin strap type of game. Definitely bet the under if you're a betting man.
Low scoring, yeah.
Old school Big Ten. And, as long as they don't turn the ball over, Iowa, and, they have this bell cow back and Tyler Goodson, run the ball about 30 times, I think Iowa's going to win.
Wisconsin ranks first in the FBS in total defense, rushing defense, and passing defense. That being said, Iowa has played well at home this year. This is a tough one for me. This should be a pick 'em. I'm not sure the spread. Haven't done that much research, but Iowa's at home.
Iowa.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
I'm going with the bet. I'm going with the Hawkeyes at home.
I agree. Hawkeyes. I think they got a lot going for them right now, hitting the strong point of their year. I like the team. Don't like what Wisconsin's doing. Really just a terrible effort, I thought, against Indiana last week.
Well, even a couple of weeks before that against Northwestern, I mean, it was pretty much the same thing. I mean, Indiana came in with a backup quarterback, and they won the game, and you can only put up 6 points. I'm going Hawkeyes too. I mean, they're hot, as you guys said. Kirk Ferentz is an unbelievable coach, probably one of the most underrated coaches in college football. I like the Hawkeyes, low-scoring defensive game. You guys hit the nail on the head there. We're going to go out to the Pac-12. Really weird season out there. I think their season's actually ending this week as well, so some of them might only play like 5 games, it looks like. But we're going to go Washington at Oregon.
Yeah, I second the weird season out there in the Pac-12. I'm not a big Pac-12 fan, to be honest with you. I don't think their football is competitive.
Only after dark.
Yeah, only at 12 o'clock, the midnight special. But Oregon's coming off 2 losses, an embarrassing loss, I would say, to your rival school in Oregon State, where they gave up about 294 yards of rushing. And then they obviously lost to Cal last week. I think it's a weird year for Oregon. Cristobal is in rumors of going to another school. I heard Texas was in the works. But I think Oregon has to come back. They have to play inspired football. But I'm going to go with Oregon. I don't like the pick, to be honest with you, but I just can't see them losing 3 straight games.
Good point. Haven't watched much Pac-12 this year. But obviously, Oregon's the more prestigious program. They're the blue blood of the Pac-12. For football, I'm going Washington here. I just have a feeling Washington's going to play more gritty. I feel like Oregon, I like Washington in this game.
That's a good build up there, Grant. Very Lee Corso-esque. I enjoyed that. I'm going to go Oregon for no good reason. I kind of like Ben's reasoning. Don't know that they're going to lose 3 in a row. This one could go either way. I could see a Washington blowout, an Oregon blowout, or one down to the wire. It's just what team shows up. And, don't know that I'll find myself in front of the TV for this one, but I'm going to pick Oregon if I have to.
Yeah, certainly not going to be in front of the TV for this Pac-12 game, being it's on at 4:00, and there's some other good games on around that time. I'm gonna take Oregon in this one. No rhyme or reason. I'll go with the Ducks in Autzen Stadium. Another Pac-12 game that we have on our slate that I would imagine would probably be more watched, being it's a 7:30 ABC national game. The Battle of LA. We're gonna go USC number 15 taking on Chip Kelly's Bruins of UCLA.
Yeah, this game's definitely more appealing for me. I think USC a couple weeks ago, I picked against them against Utah, and I kind of regret it. I think Graham Harrell, the offensive coordinator there, has really solidified himself as a serious head coaching candidate. What they're doing there with Kendon Slovis, they're scoring points, but UCLA scores points too. This is going to be an exciting shootout right here because Chip Kelly and his offense, UCLA's been going through some adversity. They lost their quarterback for a couple games, still won a couple games, played Oregon tough. It's going to be a color rush. I'm taking the Trojans, though, solely because I think Graham Harrell and Slovis get the offense rolling, and they get the win. I got a score here, 34-31, bet the over. I'm going with the Trojans.
The opposite of the Iowa-Wisconsin game.
Complete opposite, yeah.
Yeah, any trust I'm putting in the USC is with Slovis. I think UCLA is going to play fearless. I think Chip Kelly's going to have them out there ready to beat up on a big-time program because they have nothing to lose, quite frankly. They're the little brother. That being said, I'll take the team with the quarterback. I'll take the Trojans.
Last week we had Dalton Polvalda on as our guest picker. He's a big Notre Dame guy, went to school there, broke down the program well for us. And we were talking about South Carolina, and he said, just so as everyone is aware, South Carolina is the real USC. And my response to that is, at least the real USC then knows how and when to fire a head coach. I think Southern Cal wins this one, and I don't know if Clay Helton makes it to next year. But for the sanctity and for the well-being of a lot of Penn State fans, perhaps, and although maybe some folks don't really mind as much if James Franklin were to be wooed by South Carolina, maybe they win enough here down the stretch for him to save his job again with another mediocre 2-3 loss season at USC.
So who'd you take, Bob?
Southern Cal.
Southern Cal. Yeah. I'm actually going to go upset here. I'm going to go UCLA. I just think Clay Helton's going to lose a game. Chip Kelly, I'm not a huge fan, obviously, as an Eagles fan. I know what he did with the Eagles, but I think UCLA finds a way to get this one done on Saturday night.
I wasn't laughing at your pick. I was laughing at the reaction of Ben and
No,
Sorry.
You know what?
That's all right. You
I
can
don't know
replay
anything.
that. You can replay that next week when UCLA wins the game.
Trust me, I agree with you and Bob's point. I mean, Clay Helton, this guy has 9 lives out in Southern California. I mean, has anyone been a more worse coach but still gets rehired? It's like Marvin Lewis of college football. It's like it's incredible. I mean, you get so much talent. You were talking about Oregon being a blue blood in the Pac-12. We forget 2000 to 2015, 16, that was USC. And this guy comes in and hasn't done, quite frankly, really anything aside from, I'm not going to mention that, a Rose Bowl game, a couple of years ago. But that's about it. It's incredible. It's truly incredible. I don't think it's a bizarre pick for you, Ty, but I think I got to go with USC.
We'll see.
Okay.
And the final game, the second to final game, the add-in that I missed, and how dare me, but we're going Navy at Army, West Point, Saturday at 3:00.
Yeah, it's really simple. I'm going Army here. I think they, for a while it was Navy would just beat the crap out of them for about a decade. But Army's a good program now. They play tough teams, and you know what? Credit to both teams, though. I hope it's a great game. Probably going to be like 10-7 or something. Not a lot of passing, but Army.
Yeah, will be fun to watch. I'll definitely be tuning into this game. Always do. I'm going to go with Navy here. I think they're going to win. Navy.
The winner, of course, is America. But beyond that, we're going to go Army. Go Army, beat Navy.
I'm right there. I'm go Army, beat Navy. Pretty unique that they're playing the game at their home stadium. Obviously, we talked about most of the time it's at Philadelphia, Baltimore. So I like Army in this one. They're having a better season by far. And, yeah, it seems like maybe the tide is turning a little bit. It was Navy forever, and maybe it's now over to the Black Knights and Army to finally get it going on their end. And then the final game, Michigan State at Penn State. Penn State is 14.5-point favorites. So if you guys would be so kind to give us your winners and then your score predictions, and obviously with that would be the cover or no cover for Penn State.
Yeah, so it's kind of been a rough year for both programs. If you're going to ask me what program's in better shape, I would say Penn State still. I mean, Michigan State, since the playoffs have been intact, this team's just taken a straight nosedive. I mean, this was a playoff team 4 or 5 years ago, and they are awful now. I mean, they hired Mel Tucker after a 5-7 year of Colorado. I don't know what they were thinking, and it's proven they're not that good of a team anymore. The Land Grant Trophy, the series is 17-16-1. I believe Penn State holds that, or no, Michigan State does. But Vegas knows something, 14.5 points. I'm taking Penn State, but they're not going to cover. I say it's going to be 27-13. Michigan State's offense is putrid. Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I was the first person on this podcast to correctly pick a Penn State game where they won. I picked them last time. You guys were on Michigan. I got the dub. So I'm sticking with Penn State. I will agree with Ben that Vegas does know something. I think Penn State covers. They blow the doors off them. Penn State 37-13. We'll go there.
I agree with you, Grant. And it's coming from a place of, I think Michigan State has mailed it in. I think they're done. I think Ohio State broke their spirit. I think any goodwill that came from that Northwestern win is gone. And I think Penn State is actually in a position where, hey, they can end the regular season with 3 straight wins, go to a +1 game where they're probably going to be playing a team that they're playing better than out in the West. And then who the heck knows after that. But I do see a little bit of spirit in this team that I didn't see in the Maryland game and the Nebraska game, and I think they cover. 14.5 is a big number, but I think they cover.
Yeah. Another thing is it's senior day up there. Obviously, the festivities won't be the same as they always are, but still, some emotion factor going into that as well. I think Penn State wins. I think that Penn State wins convincingly. I'm going to call it, let's go 35-13 Penn State over Michigan State to finish 3-5 before the crossover game next week.
I like it. Guys, a lot of fun. Grant Opaliski, Ben Abercrombie, reveling in their glory this week, coming back on as guest pickers, but also reveling in the glory of Coastal Carolina and Missouri. Congrats on great weeks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. And shout out Kevin Long. I wore the Ken Griffey Jr. official Nike logo shirt. Kev always loved Griffey, so shout out Kev Long. Nova report, Villanova basketball report, always a good watch. So keep doing your thing, guys.
My man, thank you.
Bob, thanks for having me. If Penn State doesn't give me a win this week, I'm never coming back on this show again because I picked them twice. And I might be the bad luck. So don't have me on if they lose. So,
well, we appreciate it nonetheless. Thanks so much for your time and for being here. Tyler, thanks as always, my man. Hopefully there's something to talk about next week, right?
Yeah, hopefully we have another show next week and, probably maybe be the last one of the year. Who knows? But, always a good time. Great to have these guys on doing picks. Great entertainment, really good picks. They know their stuff, and their teams are having unbelievable years. So cool to have them back on.
No doubt about it. So for Grant and Ben, our guest pickers, Tyler Gelhaus, my co-host, I'm Bob Long, saying so long, and we'll see you guys next week. Enjoy the football.